April 1943. The Pacific War is at a turning point. The United States has clawed its way back from the devastation of Pearl Harbor, and the Japanese Empire is on the defensive. But in Tokyo, one man still commands respect and fear on both sides of the Pacific. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of the attack on Pearl Harbor and the mastermind behind Japan's naval strategy. Yamamoto is more than just a military leader. He's a symbol. To the Japanese public, he's a national hero. To the Allies, he's the most dangerous man in the Pacific. He's also a realist. Yamamoto knows that Japan's early victories were built on surprise and audacity, but that the tide is turning. American industry is ramping up, new ships and planes are pouring into the Pacific, and the U.S. Navy is learning fast. On April 14, 1943, Yamamoto's staff sends a coded message outlining his upcoming inspection tour of the Solomon Islands. The message is routine: dates, times, flight plans, and the names of the officers who will accompany him. But what Yamamoto doesn't know is that American codebreakers at Station Hypo in Hawaii are listening. They intercept the message, decrypt it, and realize they have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity: the chance to eliminate the mastermind of the Japanese Navy. The plan that emerges is as daring as it is dangerous. Yamamoto will be flying from Rabaul to Balali Island, a journey of more than 400 miles over open ocean. The only American fighter with the range to intercept him is the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, a twin-engine, long-range aircraft that's still new to the Pacific theater. The mission: fly 435 miles from Guadalcanal, ambush Yamamoto's bomber at the exact moment it arrives, and shoot it down before the Japanese can react. The odds are daunting. The P-38's will have to navigate by dead reckoning, flying low over the ocean to avoid radar and visual detection. They'll have just minutes to find and intercept Yamamoto's plane. If they're late, he'll be gone. If they're early, they risk being spotted and attacked by Japanese fighters. And even if they succeed, they'll have to make the 435-mile return trip on near-empty fuel tanks, with no hope of rescue if they go down. Major John Mitchell, the mission leader, knows the risks. He selects the best pilots in the 339th Fighter Squadron, including Captain Thomas Lanphier and Lieutenant Rex Barber. The men are briefed in absolute secrecy. They're told only that their target is high value. No names, no details. The mission is so sensitive that even the pilots Don T know they being sent to kill Yamamoto until after the fact. The P-38 Lightning is the only plane that can make the trip. With its twin engines, turbo superchargers, and drop tanks, it has the range and speed to reach the target and get home. It's also heavily armed, with 4 50-caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon in the nose. The pilots trust their planes, but they know that one mistake, one navigation error, one mechanical failure could mean disaster. The morning of April 18, 1943, dawns clear and calm. The P-38's take off from Guadalcanal, flying low over the ocean to avoid detection. The navigation is nerve-wracking. There are no landmarks, no radio beacons, just compass headings and the hope that the calculations are right. The pilots fly in radio silence, scanning the horizon for any sign of the enemy. As they approach the intercept point, the tension is palpable. Every minute counts. If they miss the rendezvous by even a few miles, the mission will fail. Suddenly, the lead pilot spots 2 Japanese bombers, escorted by 60 fighters, approaching at the exact time and place predicted by the codebreakers. It's Yamamoto's plane. The Americans split into 2 groups. One group climbs to engage the escorting Zeros, drawing them away from the bombers. The other group, led by Lanphier and Barber, dives on the bombers. The attack is swift and deadly. Lanphier fires a burst at the lead bomber, hitting the right engine and wing. Barber lines up on the second bomber and opens fire, watching as it bursts into flames and crashes into the jungle below. The entire engagement lasts less than 5 minutes. Both bombers are destroyed. The P-38's turn for home, low on fuel and adrenaline pumping. They've accomplished the impossible, intercepted and killed the most important Japanese admiral in the Pacific, 400 miles behind enemy lines. Back at base, the pilots are debriefed in secrecy. The news of Yamamoto's death is kept under wraps for weeks to protect the code-breaking operation that made the mission possible. When the Japanese finally recover the wreckage and confirm Yamamoto's identity, the shock is immediate. Japanese pilots and commanders can't believe that American fighters could have flown so far, so precisely, and struck with such deadly accuracy. At first, they blame bad luck or a traitor. Only later do they realize the truth. Their codes have been broken, and American capabilities are far greater than they imagined. The mission, codenamed Operation Vengeance, becomes one of the most legendary air raids of the war. It's a story of intelligence, technology, and courage, a story that shows how the right combination of brains, machines, and guts can change the course of history. But how did American codebreakers crack Yamamoto's travel plans? And what made the P-38 Lightning the only fighter in the world capable of pulling off such a mission? The story of Operation Vengeance didn't start in a cockpit or on a runway. It began in a cramped, windowless room thousands of miles from the front lines at Station Hypo, the U.S. Navy's code-breaking center in Pearl Harbor. Here, a team of cryptanalysts, linguists, and mathematicians worked around the clock, sifting through endless streams of intercepted Japanese radio traffic. Their mission: to break the codes that kept the Imperial Japanese Navy's secrets safe. By 1943, Station Hypo had already scored some major victories. Their work had helped turn the tide at Midway, where U.S. forces ambushed and destroyed 4 Japanese carriers. But the stakes were even higher now. The Allies knew that if they could keep reading Japanese messages, they could anticipate enemy moves, protect their own fleets, and strike at the heart of the enemy's war machine. The message that changed everything arrived on April 14, 1943. It was a routine-looking dispatch encrypted in the Japanese Navy's JN-25 code. But when the codebreakers decrypted it, they realized what they had. Admiral Yamamoto's detailed itinerary for an inspection tour of the Solomon Islands. The message included times, routes, aircraft types, and even the names of the officers who would accompany him. It was a goldmine of intelligence and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The decision to act was not taken lightly. Killing Yamamoto would be a major blow to Japanese morale and leadership, but it also risked exposing the fact that the U.S. was reading Japanese codes. If the Japanese suspected their communications were compromised, they would change their ciphers, and the Allies would lose their most valuable source of intelligence. The debate went all the way to the top. President Roosevelt himself approved the mission, with strict orders to make the attack look like a lucky encounter, not a planned assassination. With the green light given, the planning began. The first challenge was distance. Yamamoto's flight from Rabaul to Balale Island was more than 400 miles from the nearest Allied base on Guadalcanal. No American fighter except the P-38 Lightning had the range to make the 870-mile round trip. Even then, the mission would push the P-38's to their absolute limits. Every drop tank, every gallon of fuel, every ounce of weight had to be calculated with precision. Major John Mitchell, the mission leader, was given the details and told to select his best pilots. He chose 16 men from the 339th Fighter Squadron, experienced, cool under pressure, and trusted to keep a secret. The pilots were briefed in absolute secrecy. They were told only that their target was high value. The navigation would be by dead reckoning. No radio beacons, no landmarks, just compass headings, and the hope that the calculations were right. The mission plan was a masterpiece of precision. The P-38's would fly at low altitude just above the waves to avoid Japanese radar and visual detection. They would navigate by time, speed, and heading, aiming to arrive at the intercept point within a window of just a few minutes. If they were early, they risked being spotted and attacked by Japanese fighters. If they were late, Yamamoto would be gone. The pilots prepared their planes with meticulous care. Every system was checked and double-checked. Drop tanks were filled to the brim. Ammunition was loaded. The men knew that if anything went wrong, if they got lost, ran out of fuel, or were shot down, they would be on their own, deep behind enemy lines. The night before the mission, the tension was palpable. Some pilots wrote letters home, just in case. Others tried to sleep, but most lay awake, running through the plan in their minds. They knew the risks. They also knew the importance of the mission. Killing Yamamoto would be a blow not just to the Japanese Navy, but to the entire Japanese war effort. At dawn on April 18, 1943, the P-38's took off from Guadalcanal. The weather was clear, the sea calm. The formation flew low and fast, hugging the surface of the ocean to stay hidden. The navigation was nerve-wracking. There were no landmarks, no radio beacons, just compass headings, and the hope that the calculations were right. The pilots flew in radio silence, scanning the horizon for any sign of the enemy. As they neared the intercept point, the tension mounted. Every minute counted. If they missed the rendezvous by even a few miles, the mission would fail. Suddenly, the lead pilot spotted 2 Japanese bombers, escorted by 6 Zero fighters, approaching at the exact time and place predicted by the code breakers. It was Yamamoto's plane. The Americans split into 2 groups. One group climbed to engage the escorting Zeros, drawing them away from the bombers. The other group, led by Captain Thomas Lanphier and Lieutenant Rex Barber, dove on the bombers. The attack was swift and deadly. Lanphier fired a burst at the lead bomber, hitting the right engine and wing. Barber lined up on the second bomber and opened fire, watching as it burst into flames and crashed into the jungle below. The entire engagement lasted less than 5 minutes. Both bombers were destroyed. The P-38's turned for home, low on fuel and adrenaline pumping. They had accomplished the impossible, intercepted and killed the most important Japanese admiral in the Pacific, 400 miles behind enemy lines. Back at base, the pilots were debriefed in secrecy. The news of Yamamoto's death was kept under wraps for weeks to protect the code-breaking operation that made the mission possible. When the Japanese finally recovered the wreckage and confirmed Yamamoto's identity, the shock was immediate. Japanese pilots and commanders couldn't believe that American fighters could have flown so far, so precisely, and struck with such deadly accuracy. At first, they blamed bad luck or a traitor. Only later did they realize the truth. Their codes had been broken, and American capabilities were far greater than they imagined. But what made the P-38 Lightning the only fighter in the world capable of pulling off such a mission? In the next section, we'll dive into the design, range, and firepower of the P-38, and how it became the symbol of American innovation and reach in the Pacific. The success of Operation Vengeance was as much a triumph of engineering as it was of intelligence and courage. The mission would have been impossible without the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, a fighter that, in 1943, was unlike anything else in the sky. To understand how American pilots could fly 435 miles over open ocean, ambush Yamamoto's bomber, and return home, you have to understand the P-38. The P-38 was a radical design from the start. Conceived by Lockheed's legendary engineer Clarence Kelly Johnson, it was the only American fighter in mass production with 2 engines, a twin-boom tail, and a central nacelle for the pilot and armament. Its distinctive shape earned it nicknames like the fork-tailed devil Mike, from German pilots and 2 planes, 1 pilot from Americans. But its real secret was its range. Most fighters of the era were designed for short, high-intensity dogfights. The P-38 was different. With its twin Allison V1710 engines, turbo superchargers, and the ability to carry large drop tanks, it could fly farther and faster than any other Allied fighter. On paper, it had a maximum range of over 1,300 miles, enough to reach deep into enemy territory and return. In practice, it was the only plane in the Pacific that could make the round trip to Yamamoto AS intercept point and back. But range was only part of the story. The P-38 was also heavily armed. 4 50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon were mounted in the nose, giving it a concentrated punch that didn't require convergence like wing-mounted guns. This made it deadly in head-on attacks and allowed pilots to fire accurately at long range. The Lightning was also fast, capable of over 400 mm in level flight, and could climb quickly to intercept bombers or evade enemy fighters. The P-38's twin engines gave it another advantage: survivability. If one engine was hit or failed, the pilot could still limp home on the other. This was a lifesaver in the vast, empty stretches of the Pacific, where a single engine failure in a P-40 or P-51 could mean ditching in the ocean and hoping for rescue. For the pilots of the 339th Fighter Squadron, the P-38 was both a blessing and a challenge. It was a complex machine, with more systems to monitor, and more things that could go wrong. Engine management was critical. Pilots had to balance power, fuel mixture, and turbo supercharger settings to get the best performance and avoid overheating. The Lightning's cockpit was filled with gauges, levers, and switches, and mastering them all took time and practice. But for Operation Vengeance, the P-38 was the only choice. The mission planners knew that no other fighter could make the 870-mile round trip, carry enough firepower to guarantee a kill, and still have a chance of outrunning or outgunning any Japanese interceptors. The Lightning's speed, range, and punch made it the perfect tool for the job. The mission itself was a test of everything the P-38 could do. The pilots flew at low altitude to avoid radar, using dead reckoning and compass headings to navigate over hundreds of miles of open ocean. Every gallon of fuel was precious. The drop tanks were jettisoned just before the attack, and the pilots knew that if they missed the intercept or got into a prolonged dogfight, they might not have enough gas to get home. When the moment came, the P-38s performed flawlessly. They arrived at the intercept point within a minute of schedule, climbed to attack altitude, and executed the ambush with deadly precision. The concentrated fire from their nose guns tore through Yamamoto's bomber and its escort. The Lightning's speed allowed the Americans to escape before Japanese reinforcements could arrive. The return flight was a race against time and fuel. Several P-38s landed with their tanks nearly dry, engines sputtering as they taxied to a stop. But every pilot made it back, a testament to the plane's range, reliability, and the skill of its crews. The Japanese, when they recovered the wreckage of Yamamoto's plane, were stunned. At first, they refused to believe that American fighters could have flown so far, so precisely, and struck with such deadly accuracy. Some suspected a traitor or a lucky accident. Only later, when the evidence became overwhelming, did they realize the truth. The Americans had a plane that could reach anywhere, and the intelligence to know exactly where to strike. The P-38 Lightning became a symbol of American innovation and reach in the Pacific. It was the only Allied fighter that could escort bombers all the way to Rabaul, Truk, and other deep enemy targets. It was used for interception, ground attack, reconnaissance, and even as a night fighter. Pilots like Richard Bong, America's top ace, and Thomas Maguire, who became legends in their own right, flew the P-38 to dozens of victories. But the Lightning's greatest moment was Operation Vengeance. The mission proved that with the right combination of technology, intelligence, and courage, even the most audacious goals were within reach. The P-38's role in the mission was a testament to American industry, engineering, and the willingness to push the limits of what was possible. But what was it like for the pilots who flew the mission? In the next section, we'll go inside the cockpits of the P-38s, follow the tense moments of the intercept, and hear the first-hand accounts of the men who made history by bringing down Yamamoto's plane. The morning of April 18, 1943, was clear and calm as the P-38s of the 339th Fighter Squadron lifted off from Guadalcanal. 16 pilots, each handpicked for their skill and nerve, flew in tight formation just above the waves. The ocean below was a vast, empty expanse. No landmarks, no radio beacons, just compass headings and the hope that their calculations were right. Every man in the formation knew the stakes. This was a one-shot mission, and there would be no second chances. Major John Mitchell, the mission leader, kept his eyes glued to his instruments. The plan was simple in theory, but terrifying in practice. The P-38s would fly 435 miles out, intercept Yamamoto's bomber at a precise time and place, and then race 435 miles back, hopefully with enough fuel to make it home. The pilots flew in radio silence, scanning the horizon for any sign of the enemy. As the formation neared Bougainville, the tension in the cockpits was palpable. Each pilot checked his fuel, watched his engine gauges, and mentally rehearsed the attack. The plan called for the P-38s to split into two groups, one to engage the escorting Zeros, the other to ambush the bombers. Timing was everything. If they arrived too early, they risked being spotted and attacked. Too late, and Yamamoto would be gone. At exactly 9:34 a.m., the lead pilot spotted two Japanese G-4M Betty bombers, escorted by 6 Zero fighters, approaching at the predicted time and place. The Americans had navigated 435 miles of open ocean and arrived within 1 minute of schedule, a feat of precision that would become legendary. The attack unfolded in seconds. Captain Thomas Lanphier and Lieutenant Rex Barber, assigned to the bomber group, broke formation and dove on the targets. Lanphier lined up on the lead bomber, Yamamoto's plane, and fired a burst from his nose guns. The P-38's concentrated firepower tore into the bomber's right engine and wing. Barber, coming in from another angle, opened fire on the second bomber, watching as it burst into flames and crashed into the jungle below. The Japanese escort pilots were caught off guard. The Zeros scrambled to intercept, but the P-38's speed and surprise gave them the edge. A brief, furious dogfight erupted, with tracers and cannon shells streaking through the sky. The Americans shot down several Zeros, then turned for home, low on fuel and adrenaline pumping. Inside the cockpits, the tension was electric. Every pilot knew that a single mistake, a navigation error, a mechanical failure, or a lucky shot from a Japanese fighter could mean death. The return flight was a race against time and fuel. Several P-38's landed with their tanks nearly dry, engines sputtering as they taxied to a stop. But every pilot made it back, a testament to the plane's range, reliability, and the skill of its crews. Back at base, the pilots were debriefed in secrecy. The news of Yamamoto's death was kept under wraps for weeks to protect the code-breaking operation that made the mission possible. When the Japanese finally recovered the wreckage and confirmed Yamamoto's identity, the shock was immediate. Japanese pilots and commanders couldn't believe that American fighters could have flown so far, so precisely, and struck with such deadly accuracy. For the men who flew the mission, the experience was unforgettable. Major Mitchell later recalled the tension of the navigation, the split-second decisions in the attack, and the relief of seeing the coastline of Guadalcanal on the return. Captain Lanphier and Lieutenant Barber would both claim credit for shooting down Yamamoto's plane, a controversy that would last for decades. But all the pilots agreed on one thing. It was the most difficult, dangerous, and important mission of their lives. The Japanese, at first, refused to believe the truth. They suspected a traitor, a lucky accident, or even sabotage. Only later, when the evidence became overwhelming, did they realize that their codes had been broken and that American capabilities were far greater than they had imagined. The loss of Yamamoto was a devastating blow to Japanese morale and leadership. The man who had planned Pearl Harbor, who had warned his superiors that Japan could not win a long war against the United States, was gone. The mission became a legend. Operation Vengeance was studied in military academies, written about in books, and celebrated in documentaries. It was a story of intelligence, technology, and courage, a story that showed how the right combination of brains, machines, and guts could change the course of history. But what was the reaction in Japan? How did the loss of Yamamoto and the realization that American fighters could strike so deep change Japanese strategy and morale? In the next section, we'll explore the shockwaves that rippled through the Japanese military and the lessons they learned from the impossible mission. The news of Admiral Yamamoto's death hit Japan like a thunderclap. At first, Japanese military leaders and pilots simply couldn't believe it. How could American fighters have intercepted and shot down the most heavily guarded man in the Imperial Navy, hundreds of miles from the nearest Allied base? The initial reports from the crash site on Bougainville were met with disbelief and confusion. Some officers suspected a traitor. Others thought it was a tragic accident or a stroke of bad luck. But as the evidence mounted, the truth became impossible to ignore. The Americans had pulled off an operation that defied all expectations. The Japanese Navy's first reaction was to cover up the loss. Yamamoto's death was kept secret for several days, and when it was finally announced, the official story was that he had died in battle, leading his men. The reality was far more unsettling. The Americans had known exactly where and when Yamamoto would be, and they had struck with surgical precision. The implications were clear. Japanese codes had been compromised, and American intelligence and technology were far more advanced than anyone in Tokyo had realized. For the pilots and crews who had served under Yamamoto, the loss was personal. He was more than just a commander. He was a symbol of the Navy's fighting spirit, a leader who had inspired loyalty and respect, even among those who disagreed with his strategies. His death left a void that could not be filled. Morale plummeted, and a sense of vulnerability crept into the ranks. If Yamamoto could be killed, no one was safe. The shock extended to the highest levels of the Japanese government. The realization that their codes had been broken led to a frantic effort to change ciphers and improve security. but the damage was done. The Americans had demonstrated not only their ability to read Japanese communications, but also their willingness to act on that intelligence in bold and unexpected ways. Japanese pilots, who had once believed in their own superiority, now faced a new reality. The P-38 Lightning, with its long range and heavy armament, became a symbol of American reach and power. The myth that the Japanese homeland and its leaders were beyond the reach of Allied air power was shattered. The psychological impact was profound. Pilots and commanders began to question their own tactics, their own security, and even their own leadership. The loss of Yamamoto also forced a reevaluation of Japanese strategy. He had been the architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, the driving force behind the early successes in the Pacific, and the voice of caution who had warned against a long war with the United States. Without him, the Navy lost its most experienced strategist. His successors struggled to fill his shoes, and the cohesion of the Japanese command structure began to unravel. Meanwhile, the Americans celebrated the success of Operation Vengeance, but they also understood the risks. The mission had been a gamble, a calculated risk that could have backfired if the Japanese had realized their codes were compromised. The decision to act on the intelligence and the secrecy surrounding the mission reflected the delicate balance between operational success and the need to protect sources and methods. The legacy of the mission was felt on both sides. For the Japanese, it was a wake-up call, a reminder that technological and intelligence superiority could be just as decisive as courage and training. For the Americans, it was a validation of their investment in code-breaking, long-range aviation and the willingness to innovate. The story of Yamamoto's death became a legend in both countries. In Japan, it was a tale of loss and vulnerability, a symbol of the changing tide of war. In the United States, it was a story of ingenuity, daring, and the power of teamwork. The pilots who flew the mission became heroes, their names etched into the history of the Pacific War. But the mission also raised difficult questions. Was it right to target an individual leader for assassination? What were the ethical implications of acting on decrypted communications, and what did it mean for the future of warfare, where intelligence and technology could make even the most powerful leaders vulnerable? These questions would echo through the post-war years, shaping debates about the rules of war, the role of intelligence, and the limits of technology. The mission to kill Yamamoto was a turning point, not just in the Pacific War, but in the way nations thought about the intersection of information, power, and morality. But the story doesn't end with Yamamoto's death. In the final section, we'll explore how Operation Vengeance changed the course of the Pacific War, influenced the development of long-range air power, and left a legacy that still shapes military strategy today. The assassination of Admiral Yamamoto was more than just a tactical victory. It was a moment that changed the Pacific War and left a lasting mark on the future of military strategy. Operation Vengeance proved that with the right combination of intelligence, technology, and daring, even the most impossible missions could succeed. But its legacy goes far beyond the headlines of 1943. In the months after Yamamoto's death, the Japanese Navy never fully recovered. The loss of its most experienced and respected strategist left a vacuum in leadership. Yamamoto had been the architect of Japan's early victories and the only senior commander who truly understood the industrial might of the United States. Without him, the Japanese Navy's operations became more reactive, less coordinated, and increasingly desperate. The psychological blow was immense. If the Americans could reach so deep, so precisely, nowhere was truly safe. For the Allies, Operation Vengeance was a validation of everything they had been working toward: the power of code-breaking, the reach of long-range aviation, and the value of bold, precise action. The mission became a case study in how to combine intelligence and air power for maximum effect. It showed that the right information, in the right hands, could change the course of a war. The P-38 Lightning, once doubted for its complexity and size, became a symbol of American innovation. Its long range, heavy armament, and twin-engine reliability made it the perfect tool for deep strikes and long-range escort missions. The success of the Yamamoto mission cemented the P-38's reputation and influenced the design of future fighters and bombers. The idea that a fighter could reach hundreds of miles behind enemy lines and return safely became a new standard for air power. Operation Vengeance also changed the way military planners thought about leadership targets. The mission was one of the first modern examples of a targeted strike against a high-value individual. It raised questions about the ethics and effectiveness of such operations, questions that would resurface in later conflicts, from the Cold War to the present day. The debate over whether it is right to target enemy leaders continues, but the precedent was set in the skies over Bougainville. The mission's success also highlighted the importance of protecting intelligence sources. The Americans went to great lengths to conceal the fact that they had broken Japanese codes. The pilots were sworn to secrecy, and the official story was carefully crafted to make the attack look like a lucky encounter. This lesson, never reveal your sources, became a cornerstone of intelligence operations in the decades that followed. For the men who flew the mission, the experience was life-changing. Some, like Captain Thomas Lanphier and Lieutenant Rex Barber, became legends, their names forever linked to one of the most daring missions of the war. Others returned to relative obscurity, their role in history known only to a few, but all of them shared the knowledge that they had been part of something extraordinary, a mission that combined skill, courage, and a little bit of luck to achieve the impossible. The Japanese, for their part, learned hard lessons about the vulnerability of their communications, the reach of American air power, and the need for better security and coordination. The shock of Yamamoto Ichi's death forced a reevaluation of strategy and contributed to the growing sense of inevitability about the war Ichi's outcome. Today, Operation Vengeance is remembered as one of the most remarkable feats of World War II. It is studied in military academies, celebrated in documentaries, and honored by historians and aviation enthusiasts alike. The mission's legacy lives on in every long-range strike, every precision raid, and every operation that combines intelligence, technology, and courage to achieve the extraordinary. But perhaps the most important lesson of Operation Vengeance is that war is not just about machines or tactics, it is about people. It's about the code breakers who worked in silence, the engineers who built the planes, the pilots who risked everything, and the leaders who made the hard decisions. It's about the power of teamwork, the value of innovation, and the courage to act when the moment comes. As you finish this documentary, think about what Operation Vengeance means for us today. Is it a lesson in the power of intelligence? A reminder that no one is untouchable? Or simply a story of how determination, skill, and a willingness to try the impossible can change the world? Whatever it is, let it inspire you to face your own challenges with the same spirit of daring and hope. If you've enjoyed this journey through the story of the P-38's impossible mission and the men who made it happen, please like, comment, and subscribe for more untold WWII stories and deep dives into the technology and people that shaped history. What do you think is the most important lesson from Operation Vengeance? Share your thoughts below. We love hearing your take. Thank you for joining us on this flight through history. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep remembering the real stories behind the legends.